Wait, why am I talking about this film for? 67 Casino Royale, that junk? Why this film? You've made a point of not talking about too many Bond films. You know, you say you only like the first two in Casino Royale 2006. Why, though one may recall, like, I have mentioned a love for 1967 Casino Royale prior. Well, why the hell is that? Fuck it, how can you not? Just look at this film. Look at everything in this film. This film is insane. There's nothing like it. This film is a certifiable good time with friends and drinks and substances and whatever, food, whatever hell else you want. But I assure you, well, maybe I'm just weirder than I realize. It is what it is. This film is a damning indictment of just a inadvertent piece of evidence against the artistic merits of major film productions of the mid to late 1960s, and perhaps just that later indulgent 1960s countercultural, evocative, colourful, psychedelic zeitgeist in general, that early baby boomer era of popular culture. What a wild, swinging, partying time. And this film is such an absolute mess. It went through many different stages of pre-production, and then the production itself, rather than being settled and grounded with a certain plot gravity, it's as though the film was still in pre-production. It's like 5 different films were started, and they've mashed them together into this one completely almost incoherent edit. It's a total farce. It's an absolute cynical joke, and yet it's wild, brilliant fun. It was gifted with the most needlessly brilliant musical score in the history of the medium. I can hardly wait to hold you, feel my arms around you. How long I have waited just to hold you now that I have found you. The original vinyl release of the Casino Royale soundtrack in 1967, some have considered it possibly the most hi-fi recording of the analog era. Even listening to a digital remaster of this score, it is unbelievable. The precision of Burt Bacharach's arrangements and the precision with which it was recorded, oh my god, it's better than heaven. It sincerely contains one of my most favoured opening themes to any film of all time. And another layer of horns come in. It's a glorious arrangement, superbly produced. It couldn't have been better produced in the analog era. I don't know if digital can record as well as what was accomplished on the Casino Royale 1967 soundtrack. I'm not convinced. The music alone is an argument for the justification of this film's place in the history of the medium. But the production values, what an insane collection of sets, interiors, costumes, props. This is absolute madness. And a part of one wants to say it's, look at all that money burning up on the screen. This film was a smash commercial success from what I can understand. It still has one of the most iconic posters of all time. It's one of the most iconic of the Bond posters in general. One of my favourite film sets of all time is Ursula Andress's character's bedroom. Well, the upper level of it. She leads Peter Sellers in past the fish tanks with The Look of Love playing in the background, and then they enter the room with the bed that goes down like an elevator. I can't believe the amount of effort that went into this film's production. And you know what the fascinating thing is? And this is... So Casino Royale 1967, it comes out at the time... So the Nouvelle Vague is in vogue over on the European continent, and the Hollywood New Wave in the United States is taking off in 1967. And yet... Casino Royale 1967 is the ultimate anti-auteur film if there ever was one. I've read that quote elsewhere. That's not me making that up. I don't remember who wrote that. Although it couldn't be truer. Sincerely, really couldn't. Val Guest, John Huston, Richard Talmadge, God, Joseph McGrath. There's a few credited directors on this film. It's a nightmare. John Huston even appears briefly in the film as M and is. I guess they couldn't film any more scenes of John Huston, so they established that he was like killed by a cannon. It's so strange, like that if that's what was intended in the script. It's so unusual. This film was the brainchild of some producers, and they attempted vainly to get a director to tie it all together. No one was willing or able to do so, apparently. So yeah, we have a film of production values and budgetary indulgence and no artistic vision, idea, or coherence, gravity about the entirety, about the overall. But what a spectacle. Sorry, Gita Board, but this film cannot be denied. I'm sorry. There's so much oddness in this film. I could just recount a stream of consciousness. They're driving up to James Bond's manor, the James Bond portrayed by David Niven, and there's just lions roaming about. And then the cannon blows up the manor and kills M, and then David Niven's staying at M's castle, and there's this, like, boulder throwing and catching competition. It's so... there's no words for it. And Moneypenny, when she's testing out the prospective agents with the kissing, and there's there's a great piece of music plays during that sequence, actually. And they pick out an actor, an agent, who doesn't appear much for the rest of the film. I think all of that was cut. For as much of this film that wasn't finished, there's an awful lot that was shot and not included in this film. Most infamously, apparently there was a whole subplot about an agent who wound up being the body who Ursula Andress disposes of in the scene before she buzzes Peter Sellers up to her room in the midway, maybe a quarter through the film. Ironically, it reminds me of the ultimate auteur film of that era, or one of. Antonioni's Blow Up apparently was a kind of a messy production with an unclear screenplay objective, say, and so the film winds up being what it is for autorial reasons. And Casino Royale 67 is the opposite, and there was no director at the helm, just probably 2 or 3 cynical producers who had no idea what they were doing and may have been high off of something fun, I don't know. Then one of my favourite segments in the film, the entire sequence, which takes place across the East German border, and they have this Caligari German expressionist spy school with Ronnie Corbett. It's one of the stranger things in English language cinema in the 1960s, and I love it to bits. And we haven't even gotten to Orson Welles' appearance as Le Chiffre in the film yet. Woody Allen rocks up at the end. He appears in the film earlier, although his role in the plot comes into fruition in the final half hour or so. Peter Sellers' role in this film it's an odd one. It's not a film which Peter Sellers fans tend to champion. His role in the film is more subdued, and it's not particularly animated. And apparently, according to behind-the-scenes stories, Peter Sellers wanted to play James Bond in a rather serious fashion. He wanted to be James Bond. He didn't want to portray a comic character in this context. And so the end result is a performance there's certain magnetism to the performance. And he's dressed really well for the part. They've cleaned him up really, but Peter Sellers had an interesting look about him in general. And so he looks the part of this kind of hapless nobody whom they're trying to pass off as this great spy in the context of the film's storyline. Although there is a certain... It lacks what I think the Peter Sellers fans really like about him. There is something slightly jarring about it. I'm not the obsessive fan of Peter Sellers personally. I don't mind him. He's fine. I'm not really a Pink Panther guy, and Dr. Strangelove is far from my favourite Kubrick film, to be brutally honest. Although I certainly like him in this film. I think this film's quite... Obviously, I like lots about this film, and him included here. The trip scene toward the end, then the explosive conclusion at the Casino Royale, the UFO. This film's climax is out of control. The explosion, the credits roll, Burt Bacharach comes back in. It's a film for the ages. It's a film for all eternity, for posterity. It's such a silly film, but it's one of the most fun and happy film viewing experiences I can allow myself. I love all the sets, I love all the colours. As I stated quite stridently. The music, I think, is glorious. It's just an assurance of a good night or day if I'm watching 1967's Casino Royale. If I haven't watched it in, say, a couple of years or so. It's a wonderful stuff. It's almost like I can't get enough of it at times. It's ridiculous that this is the film that I feel this way about. It's almost antithetical to watching as many films as I do and appreciating film art and trying to make films. It's absurd. But it is what it is, and it makes me happy. I can't deny that. I think I may end it here. Do enjoy the remainder of these screen caps, and if you're so inclined, I don't know if I'm going to actually recommend Casino Royale 1967 here. I'll profess my love for it, although I'm very understanding of others who have no interest in bringing this film into their lives whatsoever. But I consider the film a treasure, inexplicably so. But the carpet is soft, the water is wet, and I love Casino Royale 1967. I know I'm in the wrong, just to be clear.